and this restoration has tested you. What was meant to be only 4 weeks is now 6 months. You have trained mind and body for the surprises that this car has. You are ready.
So this restoration was meant to be kind of super simple. I thought it would be just a little bit of rust on the arches, get rid of it, good to go. But, as you saw in episode 2 when I was taking the car apart, obstacle after obstacle, and here we are again. When C peeled back a bit of the liner in the wheel well, we found another hole, and this is a proper rust hole. It's not what we can do on the arches where we can just put some filler over it and then cover it up. We have to do this one properly, and that means welding. This is going to be my first time actually attempting welding, so sit back and enjoy watching me make an absolute mess out of this. The first step is getting rid of as much of the rusty metal as I can. Ideally, you would just replace this entire section of the wheel well. However, that would be a lot of fabrication of metal because you can't buy this part from Mercedes. So, I'm cutting out the worst of the rust, and wherever the metal's pretty solid, I'm just going to leave it how it is and put a patch over it. As I previously mentioned, I'm a total novice at welding and car rust repair, so I'm going to make a few mistakes on this project. What I'm going to do is I'm going to point them out in this video, so maybe if you're a novice, you won't make the same mistakes. Or if you're a pro, feel free to laugh. And drop down in the comments if I've missed any. And here we are, mistake number 1. I don't know why I decided to put sealer on it. I think I had the tube open and I just saw some bare metal, so I wanted to seal it up. But definitely do not put sealer on in an area where you're about to weld, because it's just going to melt off with the heat. With the drill, I'm removing the arch liner so it doesn't catch fire. Okay, so I have a Dremel with a cutting disc. So now the final bit is I just need to clean up this corner right here. There's a little bit of jagged metal in there, but the patch replacing is going straight over the top, so it doesn't matter if this is square or not. So let's get on with that. And the reason I'm using the Dremel here and not the cutting disc on the grinder is because it was just too tight of an area to get in with it and be able to see what I'm doing. And this brings me on nicely to mistake number 2. When I was cutting out the hole to put the patch into, I didn't make it uniform like a square or a rectangle. I just made it whatever odd shape the rust was in, and I definitely shouldn't have done that because it makes it so much harder to make a replacement patch. Okay, so that is all cut out now. So all that's left there is metal that's strong enough to be welded to. So the patch is going to go probably to about there, round, down, and back up. I got through 2 cutting discs while doing that. So to make sure the metal is the right shape and I don't have to keep cutting it, I have a rough guideline. I've made a cardboard template that fits there, and then I've traced around it onto the metal, so I've cut this out and hopefully this will fit. And I'm pretty happy with that fit. You can see it seals the whole way around. It's right where we want it on that edge and the top and the sides. Just had to go out welding the plate on, and this is the result of it. For some reason we're not getting good penetration on the weld, which means that it's just sitting on the surface. So we tried to weld this on, it just kept popping off every time. So I've made a new plate, and now just to make sure the earth is good, I'm going to weld a small tab just above here for the earth to go to. Then when it welds, there should be a good connection coming around for the wire to melt properly, and hopefully the penetration will be good. Okay, so to avoid setting the car on fire again, I've cleaned up a little bit more of the wheel arch lining, and I've also cleaned a bit of metal there to see if the issue is the contact between the piece I'm trying to weld and the car. As you saw, it just didn't get any penetration into the car at all. So this time I'm going to try and use a 45-degree angle between the piece and the car, so you get equal penetration. Now, welding in a wheel arch is really hard to do with your big welding mask on. You can't actually fit your head in there properly to see what's going on. So I struggled throughout this whole process.
Okay.
One of the most simple mistakes I made was just having the welding machine too close to me, which meant the wire with the welding wire would bunch up and it would get stuck, as you just saw, which means I have to twist the gun to get it unstuck. I'm using spot welding on this sheet of metal because if you put too much heat in with doing the long runs, you're just going to warp the panel and warp the car. So I'm making sure to leave enough time in between each spot weld for it to cool down so it won't warp. And again, as you will see, these welds did not penetrate whatsoever. I think the biggest problem was not prepping the surface properly and while wheeling it down enough. The second problem was I think there's a difference in the thickness of the metals.
Okay, so I think I finally got the welds to penetrate properly. It seems to be on there pretty strong from the top now. So I've just got to go around and slowly tie it in without getting it too hot. Here is my first attempt at welding on a car, and this is not what you want your welds to look like. However, I'm going to grind this down now. I haven't welded the sides up yet, but I'm going to grind down the top one and see how good the penetration is there. Obviously I can't see on the back. It feels pretty strong. Down here as well, I've done a couple on the bottom, and I think I might have held it slightly too long, because if you have a look, the weld has dripped through right there. So let's grind this down and see what it looks like. So now I'm going to clean up all of the excess welds sitting on the surface there with the angle grinder and sanding attachment, and then I'm going to seal this, put the inspection plug back in, and then spray this with some more Rust-Oleum, and that's the back end totally finished.
And this brings me on to my fifth and final mistake. I did not prime the inside of the patch panel before I put it onto the car. Yep, that sounds incredibly stupid because it is. I spent all this time repairing for rust damage, and I'm now just encouraging rust to come and destroy this patch that I've just put on the car. But you know, you live and you learn, and I'm sure I'll be back replacing this panel at some point in the future. But for now, it's okay, it's strong, and it's ready to go.
That is the bumper ready to go back on the car. It's been washed, it's been polished where it needs to be polished specifically, and the rest of it we can do while it's on the car. All of the under sealing has been done now for this back bit. Exhaust has been polished, so now all I've got to do is get rid of the masking tape from the sealing, and the rear bumper can go back on. Okay, so that's the bumper back on. Now I'm going to start putting in the bolts and reassembling the boot.
It's really starting to come together now, but there's still a long way to go before it's ready to be driven. As always, thank you so much for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have not already, so you don't miss the next episode on this car, where we begin work on the front.